The first snow of October rested softly on the peaks above Pine Ridge Valley.
Much obliged.
Below the mountain stood a small log cabin where Ethan
important.
Cole lived alone. He was a quiet mountain man known for trapping, cutting timber, and helping travelers who lost their way through the forests. His days were filled with hard work, and his nights were silent except for the crackling fire and the lonely cry of wolves far away. Every Thursday, old Mr. Dawson, the mail rider, climbed the narrow trail to Ethan's cabin. Most weeks he had nothing but a friendly smile. But one cold afternoon he handed Ethan a single envelope. "There you are," Mr. Dawson said with a grin. "Looks like someone finally remembered you." Ethan looked at the elegant handwriting. The letter simply read, "To Mr. Ethan Cole." Inside, a young woman introduced herself as Clara Bennett, the daughter of a rancher from Willow Creek nearly 200 miles away. She wrote that she had heard about the lonely mountain man who never married and wondered what life in the mountains was truly like. She ended with one simple question. Do lonely places make lonely hearts stronger, or weaker? Ethan smiled for the first time in many months. That evening he answered every question carefully. He told her about sunrise over the snowy peaks, deer drinking beside quiet streams, and evenings when even the wind sounded like an old friend. He mailed the letter the next morning. Weeks later another arrived. Then another.
Morning, Mac.
Soon every
Morning,
Thursday
Charlie.
became the happiest day of
Got this
Ethan's
for
week.
ya. Much
The letters
obliged.
spoke about horses, church socials, baking bread, family stories, and dreams of seeing the mountains one day. Without realizing it, Ethan began living from one letter to the next. What he never knew was that the woman writing those beautiful words was not Clara Bennett at all. Every sentence came from her younger sister, Emma, a shy cowgirl who believed no man would ever choose someone as ordinary as she was. So she hid behind her sister's name, never imagining that 50 letters would one day change both of their lives. Winter slowly gave way to spring, and every Thursday became Ethan Cole's favorite day. No matter how busy he was repairing fences, gathering firewood, or checking his trap lines, he always listened for the familiar hoofbeats of Mr. Dawson's horse climbing the mountain trail. "There she is," the old mail rider would say with a wink, handing Ethan another carefully folded letter. Each envelope carried the same neat signature. Clara Bennett. Inside, however, every word came from Emma. Late each evening, Emma sat beside the warm kitchen stove while her older sister Clara mended dresses or read a book. Clara knew nothing about the letters. She believed Emma simply enjoyed writing stories in an old notebook. Emma smiled sadly whenever she signed her sister's name. She whispered, "Just one more letter." She never intended to fool anyone for long. At first, she only wanted to answer an advertisement in the church newspaper from a lonely mountain man looking for a pen friend. Clara had laughed and tossed the paper aside, saying she was far too busy for such things. Emma could not stop thinking about it. Now, months later, she waited for Ethan's replies as eagerly as he waited for hers. His letters were full of kindness instead of pride. He never boasted about his strength or the dangers of mountain life. Instead, he wrote about rescuing a frightened colt from a muddy creek, sharing venison with an elderly widow before winter, and planting wildflowers beside his mother's grave every spring. One letter included a tiny pressed blue flower. "I found this blooming where the snow had only just melted," he wrote. "It reminded me that hope often arrives quietly." Emma carefully placed the flower inside her Bible. She smiled through tears. "This is the kindest man I've ever known," she whispered. As the weeks became months, their letters grew longer. They spoke about faith, family, childhood memories, favorite seasons, and dreams they had never shared with anyone else. Without ever meeting, they became trusted friends. Neither realized that every heartfelt word was slowly becoming something far deeper than friendship. Far away in the mountains, Ethan folded the 50th letter and gazed toward the distant valley. For the first time in years, he wondered if the woman behind those beautiful words might truly be part of his future. By early summer, Ethan had read every one of the 50 letters more times than he could count. They rested in a small wooden box beside his bed, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Whenever the mountains felt too quiet, he opened the box and read a few pages. Somehow, the words always made the cabin feel warmer. One evening, Mr. Dawson arrived with another letter. "Dear Ethan," it began. "The Willow Creek Harvest Festival will be held in 2 weeks. If you ever wished to visit our town, you would be welcomed as a friend." The letter was signed, as always, Clara Bennett. Ethan sat silently by the fire after reading it. Then he smiled to himself. "I think it's time," he whispered. For 2 days, he prepared for the journey. He brushed his horse until its coat shined, packed fresh supplies, and tucked all 50 letters carefully into his saddlebag. Before leaving, he placed a small carved wooden bird inside a cloth pouch. He had spent many evenings carving it by hand. "I hope she likes it," he said softly. In Willow Creek, Emma was helping repair a fence when Clara rushed toward her holding a letter. "Emma!" Clara exclaimed. "A mountain man named Ethan Cole is coming to visit me. Do you know who he is?" Emma's heart nearly stopped. The bucket slipped from her hands. What did you say? He says we've been writing for over a year. I don't understand it. Emma's face turned pale. She could no longer hide the truth. With tears in her eyes, she confessed everything, the first letter, signing Clara's name, and how she had never expected the friendship to last. Clara listened in stunned silence. You should have trusted the truth, she said gently. But I know your heart. You never meant to hurt anyone. Emma lowered her eyes. What if he hates me? Clara placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Then tell him before anyone else does. Let him decide after hearing the whole story. 2 mornings later, dust rose along the road leading into Willow Creek. A tall mountain man rode slowly into town, carrying 50 treasured letters, and a heart full of hope. Emma saw him from across the street. For the first time, the writer behind the letters and the man who cherished every word stood only a few steps apart. The Harvest Festival filled Willow Creek with laughter, fiddle music, and the smell of fresh pies cooling on wooden tables. Children chased one another through the town square while ranchers greeted old friends they had not seen since the previous autumn. Ethan tied his horse outside the general store and looked around with quiet wonder. Somewhere in this cheerful little town was the woman whose letters had brightened his lonely mountain life. Clara took a slow breath and walked toward him. Mr. Cole, she asked politely. Ethan smiled and tipped his hat. You must be Clara Bennett. She nodded, though sadness touched her eyes. I am Clara, but before we say another word, there's someone you truly need to meet. She gently motioned toward Emma, who stood near the church fence with trembling hands. Her simple blue dress fluttered in the summer breeze, and she could barely lift her eyes. Ethan noticed how nervous she seemed. Clara quietly stepped away. Emma swallowed hard. I owe you the truth. Ethan waited without speaking. My name is Emma Bennett. Her voice shook. I wrote every one of your letters. Ethan frowned in confusion. But every letter was signed Clara. Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. I know. I was afraid you would never write to someone like me. Clara never answered your notice. I did, and then I made the worst mistake of my life. She lowered her head. I should have told you months ago.
Please,
every week I wanted
understand.
to confess, but each letter became harder to explain.
I do.
I'm so sorry. For a long moment, only the distant music from the festival filled the silence. Ethan slowly reached into his saddlebag and removed the bundle of 50 letters tied with a blue ribbon. I've carried these everywhere, he said quietly. I believed every word. Emma closed her eyes. I understand if you never wish to see me again. Ethan looked at her carefully. The kindness, honesty, and gentle spirit from every letter seemed to stand before him. Only one thing had been false. The name. Without another word, he handed her the small carved wooden bird. I made this for the woman who wrote those letters. Emma stared at the gift, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, hope quietly returned to both their hearts, but trust still needed time to heal. The morning after the Harvest Festival, a gentle rain fell over Willow Creek.
Thank you.
The streets were nearly empty, and the rooftops glistened beneath the gray sky. Ethan remained at the small boarding house, unable to stop thinking about Emma's confession. The truth had hurt him. Not because the letters were false, but because she had believed she needed to hide behind another person's name. Meanwhile, Emma could not bring herself to leave the family barn. She brushed the horses in silence, certain Ethan would ride back to his mountain cabin before sunset. I've lost him, she whispered. Clara stepped inside carrying 2 warm cups of coffee. You may have lost his trust for a moment, Clara said gently, but you haven't lost the woman you truly are. Emma looked up. What if he can never forgive me? Then at least he'll remember that you finally chose honesty. Those words stayed with Emma all day. Late that afternoon, Ethan walked to the Bennett ranch. He found Emma repairing a broken fence after the rain. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her boots were covered with mud, yet she worked with quiet determination. She noticed him and set down the hammer. I didn't expect to see you again. Ethan looked at the fresh boards she had already fixed. You work as hard as you write. A small, nervous smile crossed her face. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan opened the bundle of letters and handed them to her.
I found this
I
for
read
you.
these because I believed they came from an honest heart.
You remembered.
Emma lowered her eyes. They did. I know. He smiled softly. I've realized something. The words I loved weren't written by Clara Bennett. They were written by Emma Bennett, the woman standing in front of me. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I'm still sorry. I believe you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pressed blue mountain flower she had once returned inside one of her letters. "It survived the journey," he said. "So did we?" Ethan nodded. "If you're willing. I'd like to begin again." "No borrowed names," Emma replied with a gentle laugh through her tears. "No borrowed names," Ethan agreed. As the rain clouds drifted away, they walked side by side toward the open pasture, ready to build a friendship founded not on perfect beginnings, but on complete honesty. Summer slowly faded into early autumn, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Ethan did not return to his lonely cabin right away. Instead, he stayed in Willow Creek, helping the Bennett family repair fences, gather hay, and prepare for the coming winter. This time, there were no hidden names and no secret letters. Every conversation was honest. Every smile was real. Each morning, Emma met Ethan near the horse pasture before sunrise. They worked side by side, laughing over simple things and sharing quiet moments that needed no words. One evening, they rode to a hill overlooking the valley. The setting sun covered the prairie with warm light, just as Ethan had described in his very first letter. Emma smiled softly. "I used to imagine this view every time you wrote about it." "And I imagined the woman reading my letters," Ethan replied. "Now she's right beside me." Emma looked down. "I still wish I had told you the truth sooner." Ethan gently shook his head. "If you had, we might never have written 50 letters. Those words helped two lonely people find each other." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the worn bundle of letters tied with the same faded blue ribbon. "I don't want to remember them as a mistake." He placed the letters into Emma's hands. "I want to remember them as the road that led me to you." Tears filled her eyes once again. "I love you, Ethan." The words came quietly, but they carried every feeling she had hidden for so long. Ethan smiled with the same gentle warmth that had first appeared after reading her very first letter. "I love you too, Emma." As the last light touched the mountains, he took a small velvet box from his coat. Inside rested a simple silver ring with a tiny blue stone, the color of the wildflower he had once pressed inside a letter. "Emma Bennett," he said softly, "will you marry me, not because of the name on the letters, but because of the heart that wrote them?" She nodded through happy tears. "Yes." A few weeks later, the little wooden church in Willow Creek filled with family, neighbors, and friends. Mr. Dawson proudly carried the bundle of 50 letters to the front of the church. After the ceremony, he smiled and said, "These letters began a story, but today they became a family." Everyone laughed. Months later, Ethan and Emma settled into the mountain cabin together. The once silent home was now filled with conversation, laughter, fresh bread, and the sound of horses outside each morning. The 50 letters remained on a shelf above the fireplace, tied with their faded blue ribbon, a reminder that love built on kindness, forgiveness, and truth could overcome even the most unexpected beginning. And whenever the mail rider passed the cabin, he always smiled, knowing that the loneliest mountain man had finally found the woman whose heart had been in every letter all along. The end.